Hello, everyone, again, and welcome back. It's the new A1 with another MPC 3.4 tutorial type video. First of all, thank you all for the love and feedback so far. I'm taking it all in, trying to get the audio right, trying to get everything right, trying to bring you some quality content. So keep it coming. The subscribers are growing. We're growing here. We're learning this MPC. So everything's going good so far. So just want to say again, I appreciate y'all. And shout out to Mr. Rollo for the suggestion of this video, of how we can build out a kit so it's easier to make beats. And not only am I gonna kind of go out how we can just lay out a drum track here, but I want to just dig a little deeper, go a little advanced into more of what we can do with the track editing, get into the layering a little bit, some randomization. Also, want to talk about the step sequencer as well and why that's really useful and to make sure you don't neglect the step sequencer. So yeah, anyway, let's get right to it. Just the first thing I'm going to do is just find some sounds, build out a kit. So I'm going to hit this browse button here now. For this, I'm going to just go with the samples that are in the MPC by default. So you'll have these samples if you just got the MPC, but feel free to use whatever samples you have. And you could go here in the content. That's going to be what's on the MPC in the internal. And samples, it will show me a bunch of my sounds, and I can go through and start looking. Now I can press the pad, hit load, and it's on the pad, and I can kind of go in as I'm playing and listen for things that sound good with the pad, and add other things to the other pad, like do that and build it as I go. But I'm gonna just undo that. Right now I just want to load up a bunch of samples. So I'm gonna hit load to pool. They're not going onto the pad, but they're gonna be ready to use. So I want to just cycle through and just find different sounds I like. And when I'm listening to sounds, sometimes I like the whole sound. Sometimes I only like a piece of it. Maybe the beginning, maybe the end, maybe something in the middle. Maybe bring something like that in. So I'm looking for different drum sounds, kicks, hats, and snares. I can go in here and I can search, for whatever I want. So let's say snare, grab a couple of snares. And I just want to have some options. I have a lot of samples here. I don't feel like going through all of them. I just want to grab, I'm going to search hat here and, grab some hats, open, closed, different sounds, short clicky ones, maybe ringy ones, whatever, right?
That's my
So I'm just getting random sounds. I'm going to search for perk and, get some of these little sounds here. I'm just loading a bunch of sounds to the pool, and I'm going to show you why I think that could be useful sometimes as opposed to building it out. Yeah, so I got a bunch of sounds, right? That's all I wanted to do was grab a bunch of sounds, drum sounds that I know I want to build out with my kit. I'll go back to main, and we'll go in here. Before we go into the step sequencer, we'll just build out a kit, program edit, track edit, whatever you want to call it now. And then going into our samples tab, where we can start to lay out our samples. Now, as far as laying out the drums, you can do it any way you want. If you're doing like a finger drumming thing, you might use, the first 8 pads in a vertical kind of way. You might have certain ways that you want to lay it out if you're, doing some advanced drumming with, finger drumming and things like that. But you really can lay it out any way you want. And usually I see kind of standard, you'll put the kick on the first. I'm just looking for one of the kicks here. not that bassy kick. Got a kick there. All right, keep in mind as well, when I press the pad, it selects. So you see I'm here, pad 2 now, and I'm editing pad 2. There's no sample there yet, so I'm going to put a snare there. Just grab one of those snares. Pad 3, I'm going to grab hi-hat. Pad 4, I'm going to look for one of those open hi-hats that I had. So for standard, and typically, I'll just put some of the other sounds that I got, the perk sounds, or maybe some of the other kicks and snares on the other 4 pads here. Shaker and maybe that chime I had. Something like that. So just a basic kind of. And real quick before we go on, let's just make sure we have this hi-hat situation set up right so that it cuts off the open hi-hat. You would do that in the global screen. You're still editing just your pads, as you could see. That's A4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have poly here, that just means everything plays at the same time. I want the open and close hi-hat to cut each other off, so put them in the same mute group, which is right here. It's off right now. Put that in mute group 1. Put this in mute group 1. So you see it cuts off there. So just have that down as well. And you might leave these pads open for some additional sounds and some samples, but that's pretty much it as far as building something out. Now, what do I want to get into a little bit here? Layering, right? I talked about liking certain parts of the sounds and stuff. Let's say with my snare, right? That snare's kind of, doesn't have too much of it. You have 8 layers here, so you can layer up to 8 sounds. Let me start playing with some other samples. And let's say I do some layering and then if I find something I like say I like the way a certain hat or the way a certain snare ends, I can cut out the start point. And that kind of creates an interesting sound. If I like that, up here in the top right corner, there's this little down pointing arrow. I can flatten the pad, which is just going to take all the samples, all the layers, and save them as a new sample. I can change the name as well, but now I just have one sample. It was that sound that I just kind of created, and I kind of just went through, making a sound, but you see, you can play around with the starts and end points of different layers and get something cool. So that's one thing you can do with the layers. Now, before I do something else with the layers, let's just go into building a little sequence for us to start with. Now, I could just play something out like I've showed in other videos, kind of record something like, well, before I do that, let me get the BPM down to something more, manageable. I'm going to go to like 85. And let's just say I could record a drum sequence. I got 2 bars here. I could just record something like we usually do. And I got some mess ups there because of the time correction. But if I hit my step sequencer, there goes my notes there. right? And I'm seeing it one pad at a time. See, if I go to the grid here, all the pads are there. I just have 3 pads, but you see how it's kind of bunched up, and if I wanted to mess with the velocity here, you see it's already, how am I going to go in and, adjust the levels and stuff of that? Well, if I go to the step sequencer, I can look at one pad at a time. So hit pad select here, and I can select which pad I'm looking at. See, that's my kick. And right now you see it's switching. It's going, that's bar 2, bar 1. I have a 2-bar sequence. You can only see 1 bar at a time, and I wish you can see 2 bars at a time at least, but either way, you get used to it. Also in the settings, it's useful sometimes. This auto scroll, if you turn it off, it's not going to be switching around, and I can control whether I'm looking at bar 1 or bar 2. So I can see everything there. In the step sequencer, you can really easily control the levels of everything. That's bar 2. And you can probably hear, the kick drums getting louder there. I'm on pad select. I can select the snare. I can turn them down a little or up, whatever I want. And also, now let me do something real quick. Let me clear out the patterns, right? I'm using the screen. Clear out everything. Pad select. Let's clear out the hi-hats. I'm using the screen to draw. It's a basic step sequencer. I'm going to get rid of this pattern. Pad select. Find the kick. Okay, so I've gotten rid of the pattern because, say pad select kick, I want to just build out a pattern from scratch using the sequencer, right? I'm on bar 2 here, bar 1. You get used to how it's laid out. See that? And it corresponds to how hard I hit the pad as well. And let's select, pad select, let's get the snare going. Draw out the pattern the same way. Put it on the 2, or that's 5 and 13. And I'm manually switching through my bars right now because I turned off that auto scroll. Oops, wrong. There we go. And you get used to it. If I go pad select, there's my hi-hats, right? And then I can lay out a basic kind of thing like that. You hear it. And it's easy for me to adjust the levels of each of those for some variation. Keep switching through the bars. I hope you can follow along with what's happening there. So I just built out a little drum pattern with just the step sequencer. Maybe I'll add an open hat somewhere. Something like that. And I wanted to show just like how much control you can have in the step sequencer. If I want to put in another kick, I could just go there, use the pads when you get used to them, or just use the screen to draw it out, and then adjust the levels. And you can adjust other things. Now, I kind of want to show another cool thing about why I think the step sequencer is good. Let's see another thing real quick with the layering. Now I got this kick, right? Let me do something with layering as far as the kick. I got my kick selected here. Layer 2, let's grab another sample. And I'm looking for that big boom that I had. That one. There it goes. And it kind of, let me adjust the endpoint. Also, in the settings here, really useful, zero snap. You can turn it on from here, so that's cool. So now I have like this really boomy sound kind of under this kick. Now, let's just say what I want to do here is, I got this, right? But let's just say when I hit it soft, I don't want that boomy sound to come in. You know, I only want it to come in after I hit it past a certain point, when I hit it really hard. Let's go back to track edit real quick. And we can start to look at these other windows that are in the samples page. You see, it's really tiny down there, but there's these little tab indicators that shows you that there's more pages in that samples tab. So if I hit samples again, real quick, the first tab is tune/mix. So you can do some real quick tuning or leveling out or some panning of your sounds, like so. For example, here with level on that sample, that boomy sample I just added, and you can see your other samples here, 5 through 8. Here are samples 1 through 4. So you can do this with all 8 samples. Say I turn the level down, you'll hear it getting lower. See, I turn it all the way down, it's completely gone. So I'll bring it back somewhere audible, but nowhere crazy. And what I want to do is, all right, so the next tab, what's the next tab? Velocity. This is where, pay attention here. So when I talk about wanting it to come in only when I hit the pad past a certain level, that's what my velocity start is. Velocity start and velocity end. By default, it's 0 to 127, meaning the sample's going to play whether you hit it the softest at 0 or the hardest at 127. So I want this kick to come in at a certain point. So I'm going to bring the start up, and you hear it kind of changing now, but I want to go to 96. And let me tell you why I go to 96. Now if I go back to my step sequencer, make sure I got my kick selected. It's real tiny here on the left side. You could see 96, 64, and 32. Those are the levels. So I know now if I'm below 96, I shouldn't hear that boomy sound, and if I'm above it, I should hear it. So let me put a couple above it and then have a couple below it. Add another one there. See, if I bring it above 96 here, then you hear the bass ring out. Bring it below. So there's a little cool trick where you can kind of have more control over what plays when, and you know, can easily come in and adjust your levels. Go into your different bars and adjust. Just to the last tab that will be in this samples kind of tab is random. I like to use this maybe on the hi-hats, right? If I turn the pitch up, you should hear variation on the pitch. I don't hear it too well there, but put some variation on the level. Yeah, you can't hear it too well, but the pitch is changing on the hi-hat. See, you hear how that sounds, and then so it adds some randomization, and I've added some to the level, so it's going up and down. Play with that. If we go back in the step sequencer also, and I'm looking at the hi-hat here, pad select to see what you're looking at. These presets, they kind of have some preset, there's like a rise, there's up and down. So you can hear how that sounds when it gets around to it. Different options. So get to know that as well. And yeah, see, so I did a couple things, just a step sequencer, and I kind of have like a little more life in my drums. Let's say back in a step sequencer, let me add some kick hits. Right. One thing I want to show is, get off pad select there, time correction, which it has there. You can quantize specific pads. Like say I just want to quantize my drums. I want a little more swing on that. You hear that doop. I want to give it more swing. So, going in there and putting the swing up. Coming here when you select events, right? It's set to all, but go to range, and here I can select any of the pads that I want to quantize. I'm just making sure only my kick drum is selected. Adjust anything. I'll put the strength down a little, see if it's a little less robotic, but I want to add swing to just the kick. So I've selected my kick. It shows me where it's going to quantize from, to and from. Do it. So now you hear that little bounce, kind of that boom bap beat bounce. And I just wanted to show that, I didn't affect the quantization of any of the other pads. If I go again, let's say I want to quantize the hats a little bit. So I'll find those, make sure that's selected. I want to shift it just a little to the left. And, it's very subtle, but it just shifted those hi-hats without affecting anything else. So, hopefully you could follow along there, but you see I used the step sequencer to really control what's going on. Another thing, in the step sequencer, let's go pad select, let's find my hi-hats, and you can control different parameters. These are the levels of the velocity, but and when you add effects, your filters and things like that, it'll show up here. But let's just look at ratchet real quick and add some of those somewhere, see if anything happens. Yes, I'm sure you can hear that. Go to bar 1. Okay, so I'm adjusting the level of that ratchet feature, which gives me, super fast, clicky effect. And in addition, when you're doing things like with the automation, the XF, whatever it's called, what's it called again? The XYFX, you'll find it in the step sequencer. In fact, the red under the step sequencer says automation. You double click it or you shift automation, like it's taking you to the same place. I'm affecting an automation right now. So yeah, hopefully you could see everything that I did there. Play around with all of that and building your sequence, and then continue to copy and make variation for your beat. Just a quick little bonus thing I want to show, and maybe you can help me understand this better. But in addition, some of these envelopes and low frequency oscillation, like if I make sure that I'm on my kick, which is pad 1, and I come to this low frequency oscillation, I can send it to this filter parameter, turn it up. Okay, it's recording. It's recording on, I guess somewhere I accidentally pressed that button up there and it recorded that automation, so my bad. And I could actually go and show you, like in the step sequencer, it's gonna be there, LFO to filter. This is where that's happening. Right? So I kind of did that by mistake, but this is kind of just a bonus, the end, a little advanced, but that's where you can go in and find some of that automation you're recording. You record automation by activating in the top right here, turn it to write mode, it turns red. So yeah, my bad, but at least you kind of see something cool there. So I can clear it out and I won't have that automation that I just had happening. So that's another thing to take note of, like that's where your automation's gonna go. I don't know why it's not leaving there. There we go. That's where your automation's gonna go. See, so now I don't have that thing going on. Make sure it's off. It's on read mode. And back to regularly scheduled programming. Low frequency oscillation. This is bonus stuff here. I send it to the filter now. And you can kind of hear it taking effect, but if I put the rate up, you can hear it better. Yeah, so you can hear some stuff going on there. I could do it with the pitch. Now, that makes it real crazy. And I think it's corresponding here to this envelope filter that you have set. I have low. And then, yeah, now it's doing stuff with the high filter. But I just kind of wanted to show you can kind of mess around with some of these other things and you might have some cool stuff happening, you know? Go to modulation. These LFO destinations correspond with that LFO screen I was on. There's some other things here. I haven't gotten too much into it, but some of it's self-explanatory, some of it not so much. Then you have effects where you can, of course, play with your effects. But really the point of this video was build out your drum track. Don't neglect the step sequencer. You know, mess around with the layers and some of the tricks as far as triggering it at certain velocities. The step sequencer lets you really see what velocity you're at. Use the other sample tabs, the randomization. And yeah, man, I mean, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you think of the video. Once again, thanks for all the feedback. This is the new A1, and I'll see you next time. Peace.